And I'm just going to keep my questions very specific. It's really welcome that TUSA, that you're gathering information about children living in living with long-term extreme poverty, and it's shocking the amount of TUSA referrals. Like Senator Keoghan is right to say that, but I've worked in commission service for TUSA, and I'm just wondering, like, it's great that you're getting this information, but there's a lot of people, I suppose, that are living in receipt of HAP, like you said, Naomi, yourself, but they mightn't be involved in any TUSA services, both directly, either through MEHEL or through maybe commission services or through child protection. And how do we, I suppose, where are we going to get the information about their levels of poverty that they've been living, we'll say intergenerational, probably due to overcrowding and due to the housing situation? Have we any other ways of getting that data?
Yeah, I suppose, while they may not be engaging with services through TUSA, they will be engaging with services who are members of the Children's Rights Alliance. For example, they may be getting access to family support services through large providers such as Bernardo's, Daughters of Charity, etc. And they may also be engaging with the likes of Focus Ireland. Another really critical support in the community is family resource centres as well. So they may be getting access through them. And as Maria mentioned in one of her responses there earlier, we are going to be engaging with our members around what the issues are that they're seeing in relation to child protection, etc. on the ground. So that will be an awareness of, I suppose, engagement with TUSA services, but broader issues that may not have met the threshold for engagement with TUSA. So those organisations in the community and voluntary sector are going to be really critical around informing us and informing policy development on what is happening for those families. Also, another one of our members is the Society of St Vincent de Paul, who I'm sure all of you are familiar with in your constituencies, and they do really critical work in responding to families who may not need specific intensive supports, but are supporting them, and they also bring a wealth of knowledge and insight on this issue.
And that's where, so that data has been collected alongside some of the TUSA kind of information that's there about people living in. Yeah, I suppose there's a lot of children there that they probably are involved in family support services, or particularly if there's services in their own community like Springboard projects, FRCs, any of that, those kind of. And with Dash in school, but there is definitely a cohort of people that are still living in consistent poverty that are not engaged in any services, and it's, I suppose, they're the ones that, and I worked in the voluntary community sector, so I fully love, I think the work is wonderful. Which brings me, I suppose, that brings me on to the next one about, the earlier sector that. Because, as a party, I suppose, as Labour Party, really want to see move to a full state-led public model of childcare. But in the interim one, there's going to be another third pillar now. How can we get this? Like, recruitment and retention of staff is still a huge issue, and I think I'd love to see kind of information. And I wonder, I don't know if this is your brief, that the people that graduate in ECEC, early childhood education and care, how many of them actually end up working in the sector and staying in the sector? And likewise, maybe with social care, like I know recruitment retention of staff, from my own experience as well. Are people staying? Are they encouraged to stay? Are we going to end up in a situation where there is a public model eventually, but that the staff aren't there?
Mm-hmm. Are you ready for it?
No, I think I'll touch it.
Yeah, I think that, we do know there are really critical issues there. I do think over the last number of years we've seen significant reform in the sector, certainly with the introduction of the core funding and tying that to I can't think of the escapes me now, the Joint Labour Commission payment, the JLC payments. I think that that's really important because we're establishing a wage for the sector. However, it will be really critical when as we move towards a public model to look specifically at wages for the sector. Certainly for us, we'd like to see that kind of being the first move, is that the state would take on the payment of workers in the sector, and that really guarantees quality for children, which is of critical concern in terms of a children's rights-based approach.
Yeah. Thank you, Tanya.
And apologies to the committee, I got stuck in a medical appointment which I couldn't get out of. So just to add to what Naomi has said, the Pobl data is telling us you're looking at about 1 in 4 are leaving the sector. And the main issue is the lack of parity of esteem. So, I was talking to the professor from Mary Immaculate College yesterday, and she said, they all go in with the same aspirations, but the primary school teachers will stay in that area of education, and the early years educators won't, because they can't live on the wages and salaries. So one of the big things that needs to happen is we need to give parity esteem to the staff, and at any move towards affordability, move towards a public model, the first thing has to be recognition and pay and conditions for the staff working in the services, because as Naomi said, how children benefit. They benefit when you've got qualified people looking after them. Like, we don't pay enough attention to the experiences of very small children. In fact, the 0 to 1 is even the most important time. Yeah. You'd often hear people say you don't need a degree to change a nappy. Actually, the research says you do. But it's
absolutely. I totally agree.
So if the committee could centre or focus on that needs to be the game changer that this government achieves, because the sector will continue to limp on and people will get their qualifications and they'll leave and they'll just transfer into primary school education until the salary issue is resolved.
No, thank you for saying that. And likewise, I think across the whole social care sector, Section 37, Section 56 workers are experiencing the same lack of pay parity. Yeah. But like another question I just wanted to ask is about the Equal Start programme. Like, I can see that, from your own report here, your opening briefing as well, that I suppose the greatest amount of children involved with community-based settings are experiencing high levels of poverty and hunger. Is the Equal Start programme, would it be better targeting all that money just towards community-based settings, like we'll say like Springboard settings or Life Start, them, rather than having them within private providers? So are Equal Start, is that programme available in private providers as well?
Am I allowed just a brief reply, if that's okay, and we'll move on?
Yeah, so there's quite a sophisticated system to identify who gets to be part of the Equal Start programme, and it's the deprivation measures. So it can be the community-based settings or the for-profit settings as well, depending on what the needs of the community actually are. So we think that's a good thing, the way they put the programme together. The issue is they haven't put sufficient funding in it, and those services we've consulted have told us they can't expand. So without any capital expenditure, they all have waiting lists, some of them of 100 and 200 children. We won't really see the main impact of that programme doing what it needs to do, which is really transform the lives of small and young children.
Yeah. To ask, if I could, about the national play policy, and I'm just wondering, would it be an idea that if there is a kind of an intergovernmental committee that they're going to all work on a child poverty strategy, would it, like, I think there's a huge issue with unused, and I know this came up earlier on as well, about in the local authorities, that there's no direct funding for the upkeep of play parks. So there's some, like, and this kind of ties in with the Vienna model, that having play areas within each housing estate. But also, like, I think there's so many disused, or they're just run down, and there's no money within the local authorities to do them up. So that'd be one thing. Could they push to that there's a stream of funding that's just for the upkeep of play parks or any recreational parks? Like, there's kids playing in dirt, like, with nothing at all in it, and also I think because insurance is so crazy in Ireland around losing schools, after, we'll say it's schools, there's public buildings that we have, such as schools, they should be able to be used by anyone, regardless. And, like, I mean, most children take out, as part of primary school anyway, they have to take out public liability insurance. But, there's the encouragement most children do. But is it the case that if children, and that covers them for 24 hours, if it's going to be a case of insurance, like I know a lot of the schools themselves would say, we've all this, these buildings should be used for after school use. Could we as a committee?
Just Dublin City Council, I think, facilitate this in some places. I think it can be done. It's just not maybe nationwide. Could we as a committee work on that? That there are these. They are publicly owned, play provisions that are just sitting there not being used after school and during the summer holidays.
Absolutely. I mean, you could take a national and a local and a planned approach, because at the moment, you mentioned Dublin City Council, some of the councils are doing things. It's just that it's not national, coordinated, and there's lots of different things you could be doing. Naomi already mentioned the Vienna model. I was in Copenhagen recently, and of course what they have is designated streets for play, and they actually have things on the street, little sandboxes, tables, things for the kids to climb on in these designated streets all over the city, basically. So you can designate a street to be a play area and keep the cars out of it. And I think there's a real opportunity, particularly with the just transition that's happening, and trying to reduce the reliance on and move towards a carbon neutral economy, is to open up and create more safe spaces for children, because they're not walking to school in the way they used to, because they don't feel safe. That's what when they're asked about it. I think there's huge opportunity there. Yeah. The other thing which I loved about Copenhagen was loads of open outdoor swimming pools. And we know there's a couple of them in Ireland. They're hugely successful.
There's one in Leitrim, actually.
That's one of the and one in Carlow. So, that's the kind of thing you'd love to see replicated throughout the country as part of a policy like this. It would have a really transformative effect on children and young people.
And I think in the Insurance Alliance reform, they're trying to work with a lot of local authorities and PPNs about, that play areas are going to be taken in under the council insurance, the PPB insurance, IPB, I think, insurance. But I think the disused school facilities is a huge issue. That even in the housing estate, even where I live, there's a school right beside us, and it's going to be locked up for the whole summer now. Full basketball court. Yeah. And I think that's something as a committee maybe that we could look at, is looking at how, because they are public property, I suppose they are owned by the state, and that they should be used. And I think schools, they'd agree, and it's just about insurance, and it's and there should be something that we can do as a committee around that, Yeah.
And you could, to attach, as part of that, you could have school gardens, There's a couple of them that exist, and we know young people, it makes a huge difference to them when they're in nature. I mean, it's how memory is formed, and it does help reduce anxiety, when you get to hang out in a green space and interact with nature. So all of this could be part of that kind of national approach.
Yeah, that's great. Thank you.